Hey, today I'm going to show you how easy it can be for you to get hooked up with a veneer press so that you can do veneering, glue plywood together, and even do formed work. Stick around, I'll show you how. Hey, it's Todd Wolfe of Made by Wolfe, and today we are talking about veneer presses. Now, underneath here, I have my flip-top veneer press that I made years ago. Later on in the video, we're going to talk about how I made this and how you can make one also. But I want to start off with how a small workshop can get involved with vacuum pressing without having to build something that takes up 5 foot by 6 foot or more in the workshop. That's about how big this table is. Now that's a lot of space for a smaller workshop. However, you do not need to have that big of a space set aside if you would like to do veneer work or to have a vacuum press in your workshop. And the reason is because you can get the vacuum pump and you can get a bag. This is just a large, this one particular one is a polyurethane bag. They also make vinyl bags, and you can get these any size you want, anything from 2 foot by 3 foot all the way up to 5 foot by 12 foot and even larger than that. But you can get these, you can set them up temporarily, and then you can break them down, put them on a shelf, and they don't end up taking up any space at all. There's just a little bit more of an inconvenience in terms of setting them up and taking them down. But space-wise, having a veneer press in your shop or a vacuum press in your shop is a very accessible thing. So I want to show you, starting off, what you need to get in order to set up the bag system, and then we'll talk about what you need to do if you want to set up a table, a flip-top table system. The heart of any vacuum pressing system is the vacuum pump. So this one here is from a company called Vacuum Pressing Systems. They call this a vacuum press. You can go to vacuumpress.com and you can look at their stuff. I'll put a link down in the description. And you need a bag. Now this bag is sealed along both of the edges, and the way that they do most of their vacuum bags is that there is a strip on each end. Come off there. It pulls off there and it pulls off of there. And then this allows you to slide in the pieces that you are going to be vacuuming together. End up making a platen. This bag here is actually a 4 foot by 10 foot bag. I have a 4 foot by 10 foot platen that I keep in the back against the wall. It's actually hard to get to. I don't use it very often at all. I have a 4 by 8 that I keep in my plywood rack. So when I have to do things that are larger than I can do on this, I can pull out the 4 by 8. This was a 4 by 4 that I made years ago that I just never got rid of, although I don't really need to use that anymore because I ended up making the flip-top table. And then I'm going to show you with this small one, just to show you how it really does not need to take up that much space. This platen is 2 foot, actually 2 foot by 3 foot. It does not take up a lot of space. I can leave this in my plywood rack. It's easy for one person, for me, just to set up on my own. First thing you have to do is you have to slide the platen into the bag. So that platen just slides into the bag, and then there is on the bag there is a nipple here, and the other end of the vacuum hose, which has this brass fitting on it, simply pushes up into that nipple, and then this has to go through the platen. All right, that is actually set up at this point and ready to accept plywood or veneer or anything that I want to put in there. There's enough space in the bag here that I could put the form that I had out here earlier into there, and there would be plenty of space for that to pull down around the form. In order to make one of these platens, they are actually very easy to make. I've always made mine out of 3/4 inch melamine. There is a hole that goes into it, and they have fittings that you glue into that hole that the brass end of the hose fits into. And then from there, what you need to do is you need to route a grid system 6 inch by 6 inch, and this is actually an 1/8 inch by an 1/8 inch. And so you just route that grid into the actual plan and glue your piece into it. You have to make sure that once you glue your fitting in here, this plastic fitting in here, that you route through the fitting so that the air can escape out of there. I've made that mistake before where I've routed all of my grooves and then I glued my fitting in, and it didn't work until I routed through that fitting. Once I have my bag set up, the next thing I need to do is I need to get a piece of 1/4 inch MDF or 1/4 inch tempered masonite to go in there. What this piece does is that it allows a couple things. One, it allows a flat surface for your veneer to be up against. And the second thing that it allows that when that is in there for the vacuum press to pull air from all around the edge of this through the holes that were routed into the piece of 3/4 inch melamine. A couple pieces of newspaper. I'm gonna put my veneer on there, and then I could spread my glue on my piece of plywood and then lay that face down onto the piece of veneer, get that lined up, and then this whole thing just simply slides in. The center tube gets placed into the end of the bag. You put your snaps on there to hold that in place. Clamp the end here, and then you flip on your veneer press. And you'll notice that this is going to clamp down fairly quickly. Probably takes less than 30 seconds actually. More like 15 seconds. So that's how easy it is to set this guy up and to begin veneering or gluing plywood. Here's the thing. The pressure that we have on this is actually better than we could get if we were clamping it. On this square foot of plywood, there is 1,800 pounds of pressure. That is the amount of pressure that you can get with a vacuum press. And even better than with a clamp, that 1,800 pounds is evenly distributed over that entire surface. If I was going to clamp something, when I clamp something, I have maximum pressure underneath the clamp, but as we get away from the clamp, we actually lose our pressure. And at the end of this board, I can actually separate those. There is no clamp pressure at the end of that board. And so what we end up having to do is to put clamps on there. But even with putting multiple clamps on there, we have hot spots of pressure on this board. And those hot spots can sometimes cause problem when you're veneering, because if you don't have good pressure over the entire piece of veneer, you end up getting bubbles. The water causes the veneer to expand, and that expansion causes that veneer to wrinkle in there, and you can have problems with your veneering. I have rarely had a problem with veneer that ripples in a veneer press because the pressure is put on so evenly in all directions. The pressure that is here is not actually the pressure from the vacuum. The only thing that the vacuum does is it gets air out of the way. Once all the air is sucked out of this bag, then atmospheric pressure goes to work. And the air, the atmospheric pressure actually pushes down on this, actually a full ton per square foot. I never really understood exactly what was happening with a vacuum press until someone explained it to me this way. Imagine that you were in the ocean, the bottom of the ocean, with all of the weight of that water on you. The weight of that water is going to be pushing in all directions on you because the water is a fluid. And so as the weight of the water that is above that pushes down, it's forcing those molecules actually together in all directions. That's what's happening here. Actually, once the air is removed from the bag, the atmospheric pressure is pushing down on this, because around us we are essentially in an ocean of air. And so just like down in the ocean of water, that pressure exists even though we are at equilibrium with it and we don't even notice it. However, if we were inside this bag, we would be noticing it big time because inside this bag, there is no air left to push back against the atmospheric pressure that's all around it. And therefore, that bag is being smashed together by the atmospheric pressure to the tune of 1,800 pounds per square foot. Plenty enough to glue that veneer, plenty enough to glue 2 pieces of plywood together, plenty enough to bend thinner pieces of plywood over a curved form. So that's how easy it can be to set up a veneer press in a small shop. And again, once you're done with this, you just take your platens, you stick them in a plywood rack, you roll up your veneer press, you put it up on a shelf, you take your veneer prump, you put it underneath someplace, and it's not taking up space anymore in your workshop. But what if you're doing a lot of veneering and all of a sudden you find yourself having to either leave your bag up all the time, or you're constantly putting it up, taking it down, putting it up, taking it down, putting it up, taking it down, and it's actually taking a lot of time, and you would like a little bit more convenience. The next step up from a bag system is to actually go with a flip top table. So I'm going to take this down and we're going to look at this flip top table that I built years ago, and I'll just talk to you about how I built it and how you can build one also. So this is my flip top vacuum press. The heart of it is the same vacuum pump that I use for the bags when I need them. I have a different fitting that fits into the back of the pump depending on whether it's being used with the flip top table or it's being used with just one of the bags. The heart of the table is this here. It is a torsion box of 2x6s, and it's 2x6s. I actually flattened one edge of them on a joiner, and then I ripped them and planed them all to the same width. So they're actually 5 inches wide here. And then there is a torsion box made of 1/4 inch masonite on each side of it. The 2x6 are in 1 foot centers, and I'm pretty sure if I remember how I did this, what I did was I ran all of my 2x6s that were running in this direction, full length, and then the pieces going across this size I just cut to fit and then screwed them together, and then I glued the whole thing up and put screws in it in order to hold it together. So the size of the table is 4 foot by 6 foot. This top flips up, which makes the accessing of the veneer work in this so much easier because you don't have to slide something in or out. You actually can just set it there and flip the top of the table back down on it. So this flips up just as so. The membrane here is a 30 mil thick piece of extruded polyurethane. It is actually very resistant to puncturing. I've never had a puncture on this all the time that I've used this. I've just wrapped this around the edge. I tried to leave it a little bit loose. I didn't pull it really tight and wrapped it around the edge. Over the years, this has stretched just a little bit, and I have a fair amount of space in there to do flat work. When you buy a setup press from Vacuum Pressing Systems, their flip top tables actually have welded edges so that there's actually, I think, a 6-inch deep essentially box so that you can fit forms and stuff in it, which you can't do on this. This is just for flat work right now, the way that I have it set up, but it has worked great for flat work over the years. I have it hinged here in the back. This piece of 2x6, I have actually extended out the back about 6 inches, 8 inches, and then I have 2 pieces of plywood screwed to the side of it with a hole in it. And I did the same thing here. This piece of 2x4 extends beyond here, and then just through a bolt going through that lifts up. And then I have 2 pieces of plywood here with a slot in it. There's a lag bolt going into the side of this, and a lag bolt going into the side of this, and so it hinges here and it slides on this slot, and then when I lift the top up, it stops it from flipping all the way back. This simply folds down. I've got some corner bracing on the top. This was made out of 2x4s. Again, I made those straight, and so the total thickness there is probably only 3 inches or 3 1/4 inches. And I wrapped the vinyl around the edge. I put some double stick tape on it to hold it, and then I screwed it and I held it in place with this piece of wood, which is just a 1/4 inch piece of masonite that is screwed in place in order to hold the vinyl in place. The vinyl seals against this piece of foam, and it is simply a piece of foam that is a P-shaped piece of foam. I think I ordered it from McMaster-Carr, but it is just held in place with double stick tape. And that P shape allows it to seal against the table, and it seals against the melamine, and then it also seals against the bag here. This is a piece of 3/8 inch lightweight MDF, and on the back of this 3/8 piece of MDF, what I've done is I've routed in 1/4 by 1/4 inch grooves into it, and it's actually probably more like 3/16 by 1/4 inch, more the size of those grooves. But I've routed those into the back of this so that when the vacuum starts, it sucks through this hole, and then the air is sucked from all the way around the outside of this platen, and it works extremely well. You can see here that I've had to route out a little bit of extra space in order for this fitting, so it doesn't seal against that fitting. And then the other thing I did was I did a couple extra channels here just to make it easier for the air when it gets down here. All the air is just being drawn in through these holes here. Through this piece of melamine, I have actually put one of these. So this here is where the vacuum is sucked through the melamine plywood, and it's sucked through a bulkhead fitting that looks like this. This is solid brass. The fitting has to be large enough here to capture the entire piece of 3/4 inch melamine. And this comes with a gasket on the top of it that just gets squished down. The total profile between the top surface here down to the table is about a little more than a 1/16 of an inch when this O-ring gets compressed. And then this on the inside of this bulkhead fitting, it is threaded also, and you can thread a barbed fitting on that for your hose to fit on that then runs to the vacuum press. I actually had a very difficult time finding this fitting. I found this on Amazon. It's 1/2 inch male thread outside, 3/8 inside. I think it's pretty close to what I have. What I normally do is I put some double stick onto the corners of this so it's not sliding around. I had to actually break those off so I could lift it up and show you what the inside of this looked like. Around the edge of the table, you'll see that I have these little quick action clamps here. And I know that I bought those from McMaster-Carr years ago. I'm sure they still have something similar to that still. When I lower this down onto the piece, I just simply walk around and I clamp those in place. That pulls that against it pulls the top down against the piece of foam, and it seals it, and I can walk around there. And quite frankly, usually before I have walked around there and gotten all these done, the vacuum has already taken place. And you'll be able to see that because I'm going to actually veneer one of these small pieces of plywood. This torsion box has worked extremely well. I just put a 4-foot straight edge on this before I started filming, and there's between a 64th and a 32nd inch worth of sag there. And I thought that this would be enough to carry the load and to not sag if I did the torsion box, and it turns out that I've had just a little bit of sag over the years, but not that much. So let's talk about the cost that it takes to actually get into vacuum pressing. I would recommend heading over to Vacuum Pressing Systems. You can go to vacupress.com, and that is the website for vacuum pressing systems. I purchased this vacuum off them 30 years ago, and it has served me well. I've never had to have it serviced. There is a filter in the back that needs to be replaced, but other than that, this thing has never given me any issues. Vacuum Pressing Systems sells several different levels of pumps, and it has nothing to do with the quality of the pump or the amount of vacuum they can draw. It all has to do with how quickly they draw that vacuum. Their smallest pump is what they call their Compact 150. That is under $400. And that Compact 150 will draw 1.5 cubic feet per minute in terms of drawing a vacuum. That is fine for flat work and smaller flat work. Once you get into larger volumes of air that you need to pull out, it's not the best choice because your glue starts to set up before it can draw that out. But for this table, or for the smaller vacuum bag that I had set up with just that 2x3 panel in there, or even if it was a 4x4 panel in there, it would be perfectly fine. The next step up from there is what they call their Compact 300. That draws 3.0 cubic feet per minute. Again, it draws the same amount of vacuum, it just draws it a little quicker than the Compact 150 does. And so it's suitable for larger bags like a 4x8 bag, and it would be great for that. That you can get for under $600. The next step up from that is this pump here. They still sell the younger brother, I should say, to this pump here, and it is their professional pump. Currently you can get that for just under $900, and that'll draw 6 cubic feet per minute, which is what you need if you are going to be doing form work. If you're going to be doing large forms for curved work, you really need a larger pump in order to draw that air out of there, particularly because you're usually spreading glue on many layers of wood at that point, and that glue is absorbing into the wood, it's drying into the air, and so you really do need to be able to, once you get it into the press, to be able to suck that down quickly, which the smaller pumps won't do. Again, that's their professional pump. They also sell a professional pump that is run not off of electricity, but off of compressed air. You need to have an appropriate size compressor for that, but you can get that for a little bit less if you have a large compressor and you don't mind that compressor running, because that sucker will run while that's drawing that down. And then they have an industrial pump, which is like $1,400 or just under $1,400, but that will run numerous bags at the same time or numerous vacuum applications at the same time. They have a manifold that you can purchase that will distribute that vacuum to different applications, whether it's a clamping application or several different veneer bags or veneer tables. Let's talk about the cost of the bags. You can get a bag for as little as I think like $70 from Vacuum Pressing Systems. That's fairly inexpensive for a bag, but that bag is a smaller bag, and it's also a vinyl bag, which is not as durable as what the polyurethane film is. So, but you can, if you want to get started in vacuum pressing, you can do that with a vinyl bag, 30-inch by 4-foot bag for that cost, but you can start doing a fair amount of veneering with that size of a bag. And again, that is only $70 for that bag. Then you go all the way up to a polyurethane, an extruded polyurethane bag, and for their largest extruded polyurethane bag, which I think is a 5-foot by 12-foot, 5-foot by 12-foot bag, so you could veneer something that's 5-foot by 12-foot. That is a $700 bag. So it's a more expensive bag, but the extruded polyurethane, incredibly durable. You don't have to worry about it puncturing unless you hit it with something that's sharp. Vacuum Pressing Systems also sells flip-top tables. Their smallest table is actually a 4x8 table, and then they go up from there. I think they do a 5-foot by 12-foot table. And those tables can get fairly pricey though. They are excellent tables. In order to get a 4x8 table, that is the frame only without the base, is going to be $1,500 or so from Vacuum Pressing Systems. I can guarantee you it's going to be a quality table, but it is a little bit more money. In order to get a tabletop and all of the base for that for a 4x8, you're looking at over $3,000. But again, if you are going to be vacuum pressing all the time, it's a great option, but not necessary if you want to get into vacuum pressing. So I want to take a moment with you and show you how easy it is to use the flip top table. I've done a video that I will link to here and down in the description about using this setup in order to glue together plywood. And it is a great option with plywood, because with plywood, with larger pieces of plywood, you can't get clamps into the middle of it. This makes it extremely easy to get great pressure into the middle of those pieces of plywood. So check out that link if you want to see that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a small veneering project. I have two 1-foot by 1-foot pieces of Baltic birch. that need to have veneer on each side of them, and so I'm going to actually do that in the vacuum press here. You can see exactly how easy it is to use this flip top table. So while I'm veneering these up, I just want to make a few comments. First of all, I have my earmuffs on there, not because the vacuum press is loud, it's not that bad, but because this is the second side of these pieces of Baltic birch that I'm doing, and I just finished trimming the first side, the veneer that hangs off the edge, off with a router, and I had not taken them off yet. It turns out that during my first side, when I went to turn the vacuum press on, I had unplugged it so that I could show everyone how to use the bag press, and I forgot to plug it back in. So that was a bit of a stretch getting that plugged in, because the plug is directly behind the veneer press, and so I just thought I'd save you from my misery. Although maybe it should end up somewhere in a outtakes type of a video at some point. One of the costs that I did not mention was the cost of the polyurethane membrane that I have on this vacuum press. This was purchased from Vacuum Pressing Systems years ago, and you cannot find it on their website, but if you call them, they will sell you a piece of polyurethane membrane or vinyl membrane that you can use for making your own press. So keep that in mind. It is $3.75 a square foot, and that turns out to be $120 for this press. So you can see that that went very quickly, and that's as easy as it is to veneer. There's obviously some technical stuff that you need to know about the amount of glue to put on. If your piece of wood is wider than your pieces of veneer, about how to join the pieces of veneer together. But in the end, veneering in terms of the clamping, that's as easy as it is to veneer. It really does open up your world when you're able to move into veneering and put different species of wood on pieces of plywood. You can do different things in terms of construction because you're not worried in the same way about wood movement that you are with solid wood. And so there's some things that you just can't do, or that you're very limited if you don't have veneering as part of your arsenal in terms of building furniture. Again, it would be possible for under $500 to get into doing smaller pieces of work, meaning pieces that are still, 2 foot by 4 foot. If you need to do larger panels, like 8-foot panels, it's going to probably cost you closer to $1,000 in order to get into that. But it's a very accessible thing financially if you are doing a lot of stuff in your workshop, and it opens up the world to you in terms of being able to work with different types of woods. This has been Todd Wolfe of Made by Wolfe, encouraging you to get out into your workshop, try something new, and to make something today.